Hello, and welcome to Nuts About Baseball, a podcast that will entertain you with discussions involving everything baseball. I'm your host, Joe Grimme, and I appreciate you joining me. Sit back, relax, and enjoy as I share my passion for the sport we call America's pastime. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Nuts About Baseball. I am your host, Joe Grimme, and today I am joined by a good friend of mine that I've known for a very, very long time, and probably someone that a lot of my listeners know, or at least know of, and that is the one, the only, Sean Donelan. Sean, thanks for joining me on the podcast today.
Joe, appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Well, we've had your son on here, JP, who is still playing college baseball at Wilmington. You know, no offense to JP, but we're not going to get into him today. He's had his time, and hopefully he'll be back again in the future. Today, we're going to talk about you. I kind of like to say you're a jack of all trades. You've been through a lot in your life, and we've had a lot of experiences together. And while we could probably talk for hours, I don't know that my listeners want to listen to us for hours, so we'll keep it pretty condensed. But we're going to touch on some topics, and with this being a baseball podcast, you are absolutely a big baseball fan. We'll get into that in a bit, but just a little background on how we know each other. We grew up together in Fort Thomas. You were a year ahead of me at Highlands, 1990 graduate, right?
Yep, that's right.
We started way back in the day, maybe up at St. Thomas Church and or through Cub Scouts, and that was a blast. You remember those days?
That's right. Art Grimme, den leader, greatest guy, one of the greatest guys I know.
Well, and the same with your dad, Jim Donelan, heck of a man, and they really led us down a great path, and we had a good time growing up together. And I guess one thing that I'd like to talk about is you spent most of your career as a police officer, correct?
Yeah, 28 years.
28 years. Now, was there anyone in particular that influenced you to take that path to become an officer?
I remember as a kid, I thought for sure I was going to be a firefighter and an EMT or firefighter paramedic kind of a thing when I was a kid in, middle school, high school. And I was a volunteer firefighter and I was an EMT for a little while. But somewhere way back when, one of my classmates, Donovan Hornsby, his father, Elmer Hornsby, was just a nice human being, Vietnam veteran, just a class act man, and he always seemed to be just someone I admired and always just seemed to be, I don't know. We were never always that close, but anytime I ever spoke to him, I just always thought, man, that guy carries himself. And he is just someone that I would aspire to have a career or have an occupation like that guy. And he was quite the inspirational individual in the community to me.
And what path did you take? I know there are different avenues that you can go down as to obtaining whatever licensing or certification or graduate degree to become an officer, but what path did you take to get to that career?
Well, I mean, in Kentucky, especially Kentucky, you have to go to the police academy, which means you have to be hired by a police department to send you to the academy. Like in other states, Ohio, you can just send yourself to the police academy and be certified and then get hired. But Kentucky, it's very challenging. You have to be hired first and be selected. And gosh, when me and all the guys that are starting to retire now and have already retired, when we started applying, there was 300 and 400 guys like a cattle call showing up for jobs, for 1 or 2 or 3 jobs. You would see like a whole building, or the mess hall, for example, when Fort Thomas would just be full of tables and chairs for 2 and 3 jobs. And then they would take you straight from the written exam straight down to the track, and you would do the PT test that would wash some people out, and then the test would wash people out, and they would whittle it down, then their background check. And the process was rather arduous just to get hired to even get to the police academy. But a lot of places are looking for that extra step, or they're looking for some education. They're looking for any other experiences you might have. And in college, I did like an internship, and I worked at a halfway house down in Newport, Transitions Incorporated. And in college, got a law enforcement associate's, a bachelor's in criminal justice. And then, gosh, my career was practically over when I went back to grad school and got my master's degree in executive leadership. I was hoping for some advancement and things along the way, and it was just kind of late in the career, and I thought I'll use it for something else. And I might still, who knows? I'm not sure if I will, but Yeah.
Well, 28 years, you've seen a lot. And while most, if not all of it, could be potentially public information, I'm not going to ask you to mention any names, but any crazy stories or funny stories? You pulled a lot of people over in your day as a police officer. I mean, you could go on for days, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
anything in particular come to mind with some crazy statements that maybe drivers would say to you when you pulled them over or anything like that?
Well, funny. As a police officer telling a lawyer these things right now, I think it's funny that you take notes to tell your clients not to say these things, but
Well, I don't do criminal defense, so
that's
I
right. That's
probably
right.
won't use this with my clients. But what do you got for us?
Well, I think it's I've only the classics. I only had 2 beers, for the intoxicated drivers, and it's always that answer. I've only had 2 drinks, and you can tell quickly looking at them you can't stand up. So there must have been 2 giant fishbowl beverages, or you can clearly nowadays everybody with marijuana starting to become legal in certain states and certain areas, you can smell it. They can't smell it because they're nose blind to certain things, but you can clearly just smell it in the car. And oh, I don't have anything in here. And I'm like, come on, man. I came from a clean car that didn't have anything in it. It's just kind of comical when they're nose blind to certain things in their own vehicle. But yeah, I guess I'm taken off guard by that question that I wasn't prepared to give you that.
We're
That
shooting from the
funny. I
hip.
used to give the joke to people that late at night in parking lots or in parks, you would run across married couples that just weren't married to each other. Was the
Oops.
terrible joke that you would tell people. That's never a funny story to tell people, but
Well,
I
sure.
mean, it is what it is.
Is there something that comes to mind that maybe resonates as the dumbest thing you've ever seen someone actually do, maybe in front of you as a police officer?
Well, I think when they just put their hands in their pockets and then give I don't know, and then they're throwing whatever was in their pocket out, and you're watching it, you're like, well, what was that? Kind of like the going to a wonderful baseball reference of the nail file getting tossed out of his hand, and the umpire goes, well, what's that right there? To the pitcher that threw the nail file, and that
Yeah.
bag of marijuana gets thrown, or that small bag of whatever that might be, pills, etc. And you're just like, well, you just dropped something there. Well, that wasn't mine. I think my favorite, and a lot of cops will joke about it, is, well, these aren't my shorts, or these aren't my pants. I'm like, seriously, you are randomly woke up today or went out of the house today and you made an active decision to put someone else's pants on, and that's the story you're going to go with, and that's going to be your stance today, is these aren't my pants.
Current officers beware. Look out for that excuse now that the
These aren't my
listeners have
pants.
heard this.
And I'm like, really? Come
That's
on,
good.
man. That's
Good
kind
stuff.
of one of my favorites. These aren't my pants.
Yeah.
And I'm
Wow.
just like, come on.
That's funny.
That's probably one of my favorite funny excuses. I can see why you think that was me. Like when someone sees a video of themselves doing something,
Yeah.
is always another funny one, because you're like, no, that's clearly you. You're wearing the same shirt and same pants or same shoes when you see them committing the theft of whatever items from the video at XYZ grocery store using the stolen credit card, and they're still wearing all the same clothes. I can see why you think that's me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
Come on now. But yeah, these aren't my pants is my favorite, I think.
Good stuff. Well,
Yep.
let's transition into baseball. I know at some point during your career as a police officer, you became acquainted with and good friends eventually with Brandon Phillips, former Reds player, correct?
Yes, I did.
How did that friendship evolve? Tell the listeners how you became good friends with him.
Well, shout out to my crew, Milkshake Monday crew, third shift. Some founding members, Brian Messer, a guy that worked at Cold Spring Police way back when. We had this third shift crew of he and maybe another guy Nick hired out at Campbell County Police, and Brandon Vance at the time, I think, was at forget where he might have been. We've all kind of moved around a little bit, but third shift, we had after the bars kind of closed at 2:15, they're all moving on to Waffle House and getting settled into wherever they need to be out of our hair, if you will. We would go to UDF for a milkshake on Monday nights, and I knew Brandon liked milkshakes. He was kind of a fiend for milkshakes, and he would post it all the time on either Twitter or Instagram or whatever. So I invited him one time on Instagram about Milkshake Monday will be here. That dude BP, come on down. And one day we were just kind of sitting around the table around the corner at the South End Wilder UDF, and I look in the glass and I see this tall dude, hat on backwards, and I'm like, BP? And all of a sudden he kind of looks his head around the corner, around the wall, and said, "What's up?" And
No.
then he sat down with us and drank his entire milkshake and chatted with us for a solid hour
Oh, man.
and just hung out. And then he said, man, I always wanted to go shoot. And I said, well, I'm a firearms instructor. If you want to ever go shooting, I can take you sometime. And it just kind of flourished into went to a range. Obviously, my wife, Amanda, retired from Covington now, but worked at Covington Police. We were able to get some range time and use the range there. And we went shooting, took him there, and we just kind of started off a little relationship that we've been friends now since I worked in Wilder, which was a long time ago, because after Wilder, I worked at Fort Thomas for over 10 years, now almost 10 years. So it's been a while now.
That's cool.
He's a character still,
And you still keep in contact with him, right?
Oh, yeah. Looking forward to it, because we're coming up on Reds Hall of Fame induction that's coming up on the 24th, 25th, and 26th. So I look forward to seeing him over that weekend and celebrating him as well as the other inductees and celebrating his accomplishments.
Well, I might have told the story when JP was on here. If I did, I apologize to the listeners. But JP played for me, as many of the listeners may know, or certainly have seen if I've coached against them or played with them. And when you joined our team, and JP did the Fort Thomas Stars, Adam at the time wore the number 4 because of Brandon Phillips.
Right.
It was his favorite player. And JP was coming to the team, and he also wore number 4, right?
That's right.
And that was part of the negotiation process. I guess you were acting as his agent with no compensation, of course.
St. Thomas summer block party. I can remember right where the conversation even occurred. I can remember right over the Big Six.
That's
wheel,
right.
I think.
I was spinning that wheel, and you were negotiating a deal to bring JP to the Stars, which was a great move for everyone. We had a blast. But part of the deal was that Adam had to give up the number 4, and I said, well, in exchange for that, we're going to need something. And in honor of Brandon Phillips, you were able to get an autographed bat to Adam from Brandon, and it even said something to the effect of, thanks for giving up your number for JP. And I still have that bat. It's a pretty cool story.
Yeah.
So
I think it was a game-used bat, too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it just shows you what kind of guy he is, because he didn't have to do that. He went out of his way to help facilitate this deal. And then now look where JP is playing baseball at Wilmington. So that's pretty cool. We enjoyed those days back in the day.
BP appreciated that. JP called him and told him the story, and BP understood you got to give him something, and he was happy to jump in and help out with facilitating and making that happen, because he understood that sometimes when you make the move to a new team, you gotta earn that opportunity to have that jersey number. So Brandon was happy to help out and
awesome.
And give Adam a bat.
Well, you have since retired from the police force. When did you retire?
August 31st, 2024.
All right. And now you are working again at an airline out at CVG, and that affords you to obtain some flight benefits, correct?
It does. It's such a cool little part-time job. I really do enjoy it. It's some work now. It's a good little workout, but I'm telling you what, the flight benefits are well worth the exercise, and I just look at it as going to a CrossFit gym. You know what I mean? I just look at it as some exercise, and I think what people sometimes don't see is police officers have to hurry up and shove a meal down quickly in between a call, or they don't always get to eat. And sometimes the healthy choices aren't always the option. So having an opportunity to get a little more exercise instead of sitting sedentary in a car, I'm down like 30, 35 pounds since I wore a uniform.
Really?
And so it's great. It's quite the exercise, and it's nothing crazy, but it is work, right?
Yeah, sure.
But in the downtime, and when you trade a few shifts or get a few days off, I like to try and disappear and go on an adventure, and I've been on several already.
Well, let's talk about some of those trips. Kind of give us a laundry list. Where you been since you retired?
Well, literally the day I retired, now this was a paid trip, of course. I took off in the air, employed, landed, unemployed, retired in Rome. and we spent a month in Italy, in Rome, for the month of July.
Wow.
No, month of August, sorry. July 31st, I retired. August is when I started that. So, so we spent the month of August. JP spent about the first 9 or 10 days with us, and then he went home, and we spent 2 more weeks. And it's nice that my father-in-law was born there, so my wife has family and cousins there, and her family owns a tour company there, so they know their way around, and we've been there a lot, so I know my way around, and I speak enough Italian that I can get myself around. Been there a bunch. Of course, the very first time I ever went to Italy was 1988 with you as my roommate.
That's right.
Choir.
The good old days.
Sang for Pope St. John Paul II, but that was a cool experience in 1988. But yeah, so spent the month in of August of 24 there, and couldn't wait to get back. Do not recommend August in Rome. It is horribly hot. Since now being retired and working part time, with my new employer, I've been flew to New York for the day to just go have lunch and walk around in Little Italy with my wife. Been to Sequoia National Park and flew out to California. Went to the Reds Dodgers playoff game out in California for the day.
I remember that.
That was pretty awesome. Flew to Arizona with John Paul. We went down. His girlfriend's sister plays for EKU, and we flew down literally the night before in Arizona to Tucson, watched EKU play Arizona, and then flew back on the red eye just because. And then that was in December. And then the very next, a few days later, then John Paul and I flew to Rome in December. And then we've also been to Puerto Rico.
Wow.
So we did that over President's Day weekend. So you get a couple days together. You just you got to be flexible though, right? You got to be.
You're flying standby.
You're flying standby. It's not for the faint of heart, right? You've got to be like Bruce Lee used to say. You have to be like water. You have to be fluid with your plans and know that this city doesn't look good any longer. When we woke up, now we're flying to this other city and then coming home from there. Now, hey, as long as you're comfortable with that. And we pack light, try not to check a bag if we don't need to. That's just one more thing that we try not to do if we don't have to, except on maybe a long flight. Even on the international flights, we try to have a carry-on and just commit to doing some laundry if we can.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Well, that's great. Well, Laura and I are going to try to get to Italy in about a year, so I know who I'm going to reach out to for little tips and advice.
Absolutely. I know several people in Fort Thomas have used that private black car service tour company that I can highly recommend.
Okay.
And I can tell you all about them.
Good stuff. Eric Barth is the branch manager for Coldwell Banker Realty in Northern Kentucky. Eric Barth, who is a lifelong resident of Northern Kentucky, has over 24 years of real estate experience and real estate appraisal experience. If you are interested in buying or selling property, or if you would like more information about beginning a career in real estate, contact Eric Barth at 859-912-2104 or visit his website at www.ericjbarth.com. That's ERICJBARTH.com. Eric Barth, Coldwell Banker Realty. Well, speaking of Rome, I want to get into a great story I saw you post on Facebook from, I believe it was your trip in December, right?
Yes, it was.
Talk to us about that. What a great story.
So I'll preface it with a trip I took with my friend, J.R. Stahl, who this airline I work for gives you a secondary travel companion you can assign. So he and I went in August, end of August, just on a whim. We flew out on a Tuesday. We were there Wednesday, Thursday, flew home on a Friday. So we were literally on the ground for 49 hours. And in 49 hours, I showed him as much as I could possibly show him of Rome, and it being the Jubilee year of the Catholic Church and celebrating in Rome in the Vatican. Our goal was to try and see the holy doors, which are only open every 25 years when the Pope celebrates and opens the holy doors. So we made it to 3 of the 4, and I wasn't satisfied with that. He and I made it to all of them except the one that's kind of obscure and further outside the city, St. Paul outside the walls. We didn't make it to that one. So sorry, JR, some other time. But so I told John Paul, I said, hey, we are going to go. I'm going over Christmas break, hoping you'll go with me in between his semesters. I said, what do you say we go try and make it to all 4 basilicas, Santa Maria Maggiore, St. Peter's, St. Paul, outside the walls, and San Giovanni, the Lateran, in Laterno. And I said, let's make it all 4 of the basilicas and go through all 4 holy doors. There's, plenary indulgence if you can go on a pilgrimage and make it through all 4 holy doors. I said, while we're there, I said, let's take a Major League Baseball with us. Robert Manfred signed, Major League Baseball stamp.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Pope's a baseball fan. We're baseball fans. I said, what's the craziest thing could happen is maybe we get a chance, and we knew where he'd be on Wednesday, December 17th. So we stayed very close on a road that's very popular with the clergy, Borgo Pio, which is a road like 2 blocks from the Vatican. It just happens to be where all the clergy buy a lot of their garments, as well as different items like chalices and Eucharistic items. They can buy a lot of their items in these religious stores. So it's very close to the Vatican itself. So we stayed in a little Airbnb like 2 blocks. So when we got a crack of dawn in the dark on Wednesday morning of the 17th, we got in line just like everybody else in the security lines. I just knew where to be. Everybody wanted to get in line and go up to the front and be close to the front. Well, getting close to the front doesn't get you along the aisle.
Mm-hmm.
And getting along the aisle is where you want to be. As you can remember, in 1988, when we went, you want to be along the end so that when the Pope comes by, you get to be close or see him or say hello or hopefully get a blessing or what have you, because we had several people from our group that got a souvenir from the Pope. So the goal is that, we wanted to be along the route that the small white Mercedes, the Pope Mobile, as they call it, comes by. So we were right at a T intersection. So I knew he was going to pass us twice. So we just had a little small sign that just said, please sign our baseball with a question mark. And JP was holding a pen in the ball, and we saw the Pope look right at us and pointed. And he mouthed the words, please sign our baseball. And he looked at us, and John said, Daddy said it? He said, Daddy said it. I said, we got him.
Yeah.
And I said, he'll be back, because he passed us going down and going through St. Peter's Square out to the masses out near the obelisk, around the obelisk that's in the center of the Vatican Square. And then when he came back, he was going to make a slow left turn up towards St. Peter's itself and go sit under the awning in his seat where he's sitting. He saw coming towards us again, and he was stopping along the way, blessing children and, sharing niceties with others, pilgrims there. And he slowed down again. He looked at us and put his hands up like, what are you going to do? One of those kinds of things. And I just held the sign and looked at him, and he tapped his driver and said, stop here. And he says, yep, give me the ball.
No way.
And I thought, oh boy, this is happening. And I'd like to think I'm a decent Catholic kid and somewhat behaved kid, but sorry, Father Ross, in advance. I said, not bad for a kid from the South Side. I don't know what I was thinking. My first words to the leader of our church, the Universal Church, is, not bad for a kid from the South Side.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and goes, from where? I said, oh no, I meant you. I'm sorry. I said, we're from Fort Thomas, Kentucky, St. Thomas Parish, Diocese of Covington. I said, we pray for you every day. And he got this looked at me and went, thank you. Like somebody's looking out for me.
Yeah.
Like, thank you.
Yeah.
And it was just this moment, and he's in the middle of signing the baseball and gives us a you're welcome, with his hand up kind of a thing. And I'm just kind of overwhelmed. And I'm just like, thank you. I can't even get it out. I'm just kind of choked up.
Sure.
And then, the conversation's kind of coming to a quick end. He turns the other direction, looks at this little girl, gives her a blessing, if you will. And then he about to put his hands on the little railing to pull away. So I just yelled, I said, I'm a Reds fan, but I'll say go White Sox for you one time. And he looks back at me, and there's this kind of like, I don't know how to describe it other than a very American face, a very American reaction. And it's almost like an Arthur Fonzarelli kind of, hey. It was like he points and then goes, hey, like, all right. And it was this, I'm like, wait a minute, this is the Pope giving me kind of like an A.
Oh my
like,
gosh.
all right, the White Sox. Because I had seen him earlier pulling by somebody, and somebody had a Cubs hat, and he kind of gave him a thumbs down. I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. This guy truly is a baseball fan. But I said, go White Sox. And he was like, all right, okay. I'll
Man.
let you have it. And I was just like, I cannot believe this just happened. And John Paul and I looked at each other. We just kind of jump up and down a couple of times. And then people were like, can I just see the ball? Can I take a picture with the ball? And I'm just like, and there's people like, there can't be very many of those in the world.
No.
I'm sure there's probably some. And what's funny is now that I've looked back on it and like looked it up, there are several, I think, maybe a dozen, maybe 20, but in the Latin world, and everybody chanting around us was yelling Papa Leone, because Pope Leo is actually Pope Leone the 14th. So he signed others with the N-E at the end, Leone, and this is just Leo, XIV. So it's just the Leo. So a very American English signature instead of the Latin, Italian, Latin-based signature that he would have signed in other, for other people in other parts of the world or other languages, if you will.
Right.
So it's a very unique English one that I kind of thought was kind of cool. But in all of that, I didn't take one picture. I didn't do one recording. I had my phone in my hand and just went, what did I just do?
Yep.
I forgot to do any of it. There was this woman next to me from Chicago that snapped a couple pictures.
Great.
And I was like, thank goodness.
Yeah.
And then I realized that the Vatican News has a camera, like on a turret, attached to the back of so it was captured as he's driving the whole thing. And then a woman right next to me from somewhere in France captured the entire thing on video.
Oh, wow.
And the conversation, she says, well, I'll email it to you. I'm like, really? Thank you. And so I got some photos and videos and all these things that just were an organic thing that just occurred from all these people. And it was just this, I mean, what an unbelievable, I thought I had a really cool souvenir or a really cool baseball memorabilia in some of my Hall of Fame trips, or a baseball bat that's been signed by, a bunch of Reds, NL MVP recipients or something. That's a cool, nope.
No.
A baseball signed by, the Pontiff is.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Especially when he's a baseball fan and you see that video from years ago when they were in the World Series and you see him, then as, attending the game.
Yep.
And you're like, this guy really is like nail biting and watching every pitch and hoping on every strike and watching every out. He gets it.
I honestly couldn't believe it when I saw you post that on Facebook. I'm like, just instantly thought, I can't wait till he gets home so I can hear this story. And I knew immediately that was going to be something we'd talk about on this, because it's a great story. And I doubt anyone out there that's listening to this has a baseball signed by the Pope, nor have they ever seen one. And I can't imagine there being many of those here in the United States.
I can't. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are. But it's pretty cool, though. It's a pretty neat little thing. I have a goal. My next adventure is already in the queue. My next adventure is going back, hopefully in May. I'm going to go back for the next papal audience, and it'll be his 1-year anniversary, I believe, on the 8th of May. Will be his 1 year of his installation, but the audience will be on, I think, the 5th or 6th, whatever that Wednesday is. I'm going to try and take a zucchetto, the small little white cap that the Pope wears, in exchange, or have him wear it. It's been a tradition that since Pope St. John Paul II, during the papal audiences, as they're traveling up to their area for the canopy for the papal audience blessings and things, that they'll go through the audience and either take off theirs and trade, or just take yours, put it on, and give it back to you as they're coming through the crowd, so that you can have a zucchetto that's been worn by the Pope.
Wow.
So that's hopefully I don't let down the St. Thomas Summer Block Party, because that's a big promise that I'm hoping to fulfill, so that it can be a cool silent auction, or an auction or raffle item. We'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we'll see what happens if we can get that as an item to help raise some funds for some of the needs we have in our parish and the school that's busting at the seams that we need to help. It'll be a cool story if I can make it happen.
That's awesome.
That's the game plan, because I certainly know where to stand.
Yeah.
I certainly know where to be. So it just comes from years of traveling to Rome and being in the right places at the right times.
What a great experience. Just an awesome story. Well, like I've said, you're a jack of all trades, and now your current, quest is running for Campbell County Constable, right?
Oh boy. Yeah, I
Yeah,
am.
talk to me a little bit about this campaign. First of all, tell the listeners, what is a constable? What duties do you have in that position?
Well, hopefully none. That's gonna be the cool part.
Okay,
That's part of my campaign platforms.
there you
I
go.
intend to try not to do anything. And that's a promise. I mean it. Yeah. So the constable is a constitutional office that's on the books in Kentucky, as well as 15 other states in the United States. That it still exists, and I kind of think it's antiquated, and I don't know that it really needs to be in existence anymore. At least not in Northern Kentucky. We have a fine, well-trained group of law enforcement officers in the Northern Kentucky region. And I think constable is still one of those things that it is utilized in some of the southern counties of Kentucky as just an additional peace officer. And Campbell County has 3 of them. And they followed the same magisterial districts as our commissioners. So for me, my example, I live in District 1. So that is almost all of Fort Thomas, except 2 precincts on the far north end of town that fall under District 2, along with all of Newport, Bellevue, Dayton, and Southgate, and Wilder.
Mm-hmm.
It is truly a peace officer, law enforcement job that hasn't taken on a law enforcement role in the Campbell County, Northern Kentucky area in a long time. And 2 years ago, they changed the statute that any newly elected constable, if they are to do any law enforcement activities, must be a certified sworn peace officer. And that's when I decided to run, as I wanted to make sure that it stayed with someone who's a certified sworn peace officer for the future. And I don't intend to be a cop, if you will. I'm not going to drive around in a car, a marked car, or a uniform, or be a police officer in any way. The other thing that the constable can do, and the one thing you probably have seen a constable do, and maybe even yourself as an attorney probably utilize them and don't even realize you did it, is you may have paid them to serve papers.
Right.
Either summonses, subpoenas, eviction notices, or any other court documents. They can do service just like the sheriff's office does.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously the primary law enforcement, is the police departments and the sheriff's office. Their primary role is to collect taxes. They just happen to also, in many of the larger areas, they also take on a law enforcement role as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I have no interest in stepping on any toes of any law enforcement entities in our community.
Gotcha.
And I've made that very clear to all of them, as well as to our FOP when I spoke to them back in February and March, and then received their endorsement. So I'm supported and endorsed by the Campbell County FOP Lodge 10. So they must believe me too.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about that. And 28 years on the force absolutely gives you the experience to take that role on for sure. When and in the primary, you'll be on the ballot there, or just the general election?
Primary. I have the opponent May 19th, and then there is no opponent in the general election. So May 19th decides it.
Oh, this is it then. A month
This is
away.
it.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
a month away, and then that'll decide it.
Great. Well, best of luck on that. We're going to finish up here with, again, we could talk about 3 hours regarding our thoughts on the Reds, but what do you think about the team this year? I love what I've seen so far. We need to hit the ball, but what do you think? What are your thoughts?
I am always optimistic at the beginning of the year, and then I hit about the beginning of May, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me! This team, what's happening? And it's when you got Lodolo with a blister, and you got Hunter starting out on the DL, and you're like, of course they are.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always going to be somebody. But you always feel like there's hopefully somebody to step up and take their place. I always like our chances, and I'm going to forever be a Reds fan, and I'm going to believe in them. And I don't want to put the number too high, but I think they're going to be mid to high 80s on the win column. I don't think they'll make it to 90, but I think they'll be mid to high 80s in the win column this year. I'd love to say 90s, but man, that's
tough. Yeah, that's tough. I agree with you. I think it's mid to high 80s. I'd love to think 86, 85, something like that. They're definitely better than 500 in my opinion. I mean, starting the season without two of their best starters and holding their own with these young dudes, Rhett Lauder, Chase Burns, Brandon Williamson. I'm excited to see how they can progress. I mean, until Hunter gets back, and is he the answer to this season? Maybe not, but having him in the rotation certainly helps every fifth day, provided he can stay healthy. And you're right, we got to get Ladola back on there, and hopefully the blister issue goes away for good. But I'm excited as you are, and you're as big a fan as I am, and there aren't many out there that are bigger fans of this team than you and I. And I love seeing them every day and spend a lot of time in front of that TV rooting for them, regardless of who they're playing or what the score is. And
saw some really big Reds fans the other day at the opening day parade on TV, and I immediately thought of Joseph F. Grimme when one kid was holding up a sign, and it reminded me of, I would say, spring of '89, spring of '90, when he was holding up a sign, "We skipped school to be here."
Oh gosh, who did that?
I don't know. There was I just happened to say I saw a kid that was that committed years ago, and I saw it again this year at opening day.
I'm guilty. I am. I think the statutes are on that, and
it is.
Greg Lombardo and I, we left Highlands in the morning, and we went down and put a sign up, and lo and behold, we get put on the news and interviewed, and we took Saturday detention for that one. But you know what? It was worth it.
Worth every second, wasn't it? Now it's legendary.
Absolutely. We're talking about it on my podcast.
That's right.
Good stuff.
You thought you were going to slip through on that one, didn't you?
You called me out.
I did.
That's awesome.
I saw that sign the other day at the opening day parade. I thought, I remember.
Well, Sean, it's been a joy talking to you. I love talking baseball and also hearing about these travel stories and everything. And again, I'm going to connect with you when we start planning this trip, hopefully to Italy next year. And if anybody else out there needs some advice, I would imagine they could reach out to you as well, right?
We have done it for so many people, and I can't even begin. The list has got to be at 8 or 9 that have used our connection for the driver and services company.
All right.
Over there for the little black car service. You'll see more. You'll see more in 4 hours with them than you'll see in 2 or 3 days on your own trying to traverse the city. It's unbelievable.
Perfect. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks again for your time. I appreciate that. Good luck with your campaign in May, and hopefully the election brings you into that position of a constable. And, good luck to JP in his baseball career, and I hope you succeed with your quest in your next trip to Italy to get that signed by the Pope.
Could be cool.
Yep.
Could be cool. Yep.
Well, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.